Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Carissa.
Good evening, Mary.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We got this evening's episode of our relationship flow sip and chat, and we have our resident guest, LaJoya Camp. She prefers to go by Camp.
Hey, Cam.
They go her little wave.
Hi. Hi.
And we do have another guest that'll be joining us, but they will be coming on, I guess, a little bit as we get started into the conversation. So tonight we are coming to you guys to talk about those uncomfortable and difficult conversations in your relationships. Basically, how do we not shut our partners down? Like, do we prepare? Do you think about, what you're about to say? Want to start off with, like, what are some of those difficult conversations that you can have with your partner? Like, what are some of the topics that you have that you think will be a trigger for you and your partner, or you and somebody's significant other, that you might just end up shutting the whole conversation down and they're not even open to having that simple conversation? What would that be?
Conversations about money.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I would say intimacy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Conversations about child rearing.
Whew, yes. Think sometimes people just really don't think certain things matter when it comes to raising children. They think that they're automatically going to be on the same page in the same conversation, and they're usually not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Grief is a
Mm-hmm.
conversation that usually creates a space where somebody might shut down or not be available for, like, really, like, seeing that conversation all the way through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And speaking about children, the conversation of when and if to have them.
How about that? That is really so, because that question can sometimes scare somebody away, or they be like, okay, well, we're not having sex no more because I don't want you to trick me up and trap me. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, that usually is one of those things
And it
that,
can break up a relationship.
right, right. Sometimes when people have medical issues going on too, and
Mhm.
they're not either willing to, one, they haven't personally embraced them, but
Mhm.
sharing it with their partner, what the outcome of certain things are, because sometimes we begin to go right for the jugular and be like, oh, well, you doing this, that, and the third, that's the reason why your health is that way, or just becoming very negative statements, and it's like, okay, it's not the time for that.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's
She
not
going in and
right. We forgot to check in to see what part of the country she's in these days. We can judge her signal and connection based off of that.
Mhm.
Well, we really wouldn't know.
conversations about conversations about family in general. You
Right, because
know.
sometimes the in-laws become the
Mhm.
outlaws.
It's funny, but it's true.
It's funny, but so very true. And sometimes I'm sure you experience it. The reason why people even enter into therapy is because they feel like the in-laws are just being too overbearing, too
Yes.
involved, or that their partner has to go to their partner to get permission, if you will, or get consent about doing a certain thing for another family member. And sometimes we can become the enablers, of family, and not really think about, how we, if we've always come to support, I don't want to say rescue, always come to support somebody in our family, and say now we're, have a partner and a mate and a family, and they knew this about us, but there was an assumption that that would change once we became married or
Mhm.
once we had
Yes.
children, but you never
Yes.
had conversations about it. That definitely causes for a difficult
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Mm-hmm. So where do you want to start? Because that's we done listed a couple different things.
Oh, let's start with skills. What are some of the skills that are helpful in starting a difficult conversation? Do you just say, "Hey, babe, let me talk to you,"
Mm-hmm.
without any kind of preparation or even knowing exactly where you are on the issue? Because a lot of times you start these conversations and then you find yourself waning on your initial stance.
Right. Right. So we have one comment saying, oh, "Hey, Del Rico, thanks for joining us in the comments."
Hey, there we go.
He's saying that
No, he didn't say that.
listen, I guess that's the way we can get the male voice in is through the comments tonight. And
Uh-huh.
yes, but that's true. Women do think they can change a man, or they think that certain circumstances is going to make them act differently, be differently, show up differently. Um,
I would also say that some men do that as well. They if I lock her down, she won't party no more.
mm,
Or if I get her
That
pregnant,
backfires.
she'll calm down. I think men do it too.
they do. Would you say, Kent?
I said that tends to backfire because eventually a person may stop doing what you prefer them to do, but they'll start sneaking and just doing it anyway. And then when
Hmm.
it comes out, they'll be like, I didn't promise I would stop. I just promised you wouldn't know about it most of the time. Like, you wouldn't see it.
That's
That's
being
right.
real clear. Like I ain't
I'm
there, I
just
was
saying, like,
stopping.
that's going to happen.
It does happen like that because there's no conversation. The person is saying, well, if I do XYZ, this is going to get the behavior I want,
Mm,
without having a real conversation with their partner about whether or not they even want to stop that behavior.
right. Because there may be gains that they have that actually benefit their partner and they don't know about them. Um, and then they're actually, just maybe just different things they don't even consider.
Hmm.
Oh,
But a big one is like somebody said earlier, like having kids.
Hmm.
Y'all agree not to have kids before you get married, and then you start living together, get married, all that good stuff, and then she pop up pregnant, and you was like, I thought you was on the pill. I
mm,
thought you was on the Nuvaring. I thought you was on something.
So that's another
And she's
part of
like,
that.
oops, I'm
What if
pregnant.
you Yeah, what if you do have the difficult conversation and it's like, all right, I don't want to have kids. I agree with that. And then you change your mind. That calls
mm-hmm,
for another conversation, not to just pop up pregnant.
right. Because sometimes you change your mind and decided not to even let people know that you were
Mhm.
having a change of heart. Like you might, especially a woman might start feeling the guy a little bit more than what she thought in the beginning, and be like,
Mhm.
well, I might be able to handle having a child with this person, but not having the shared conversation like that changes everything
Mhm.
because you don't know
Mhm.
what his plan is.
Right.
Let's
I think
welcome. Let's
I
welcome
think part of I think part of not having those conversations is the fear that you're not going to get the result that you want.
Mhm.
And a lot of people will say, well, if I just let it happen, it'll be okay.
When you talk about backfiring, like Camp just mentioned, yes, that will be a backfire if you think it's just going to work out and be okay. That's not necessarily the case.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. Are you looking at building resentment
Hmm.
and the relationship ending anyway? Because now the person can't trust you.
Right. So, I mean, so then that might be the core of the difficult conversations. Do I trust you to hold my information or to receive what it is that I want to share with you in a safe way? The
Mhm.
interesting thing is I just got a email inquiry this evening about a couple who wanted to have that very conversation. Like the email stated that my wife doesn't know how to communicate with me and she's just the only communication she had was I want to get a divorce, but I've been trying to talk it out with her, and the only way we'll be able to talk is through counseling. And when it's first availability. I mean, I wanted to say it was in 15 minutes, but of course it wasn't in 15 minutes. I mean, he sounded so urgent. It was like, okay, well, wait, what am I doing? No. Today was a no therapy day for me. So do we greet you as Forever or Miss Payne, or how we greet you?
Whatever, I am who you want me to be.
Oh, because we got a whole nother name that we know of, so it's
like. Did I? Hold on. All right, I'm having not technical difficulties, but I'm just trying to navigate everything. This is my first time on Facebook Live, so I'm trying to.
Somebody's clicking.
Clicking something.
I hear some clicking.
Clicking.
Yeah, like keyboards or something.
You know what? Yeah, I do hear it too. Okay. Well, I apologize for being.
So what's in the cup? Let's take a pause while we do all of this. What's in our cups?
I got some red wine.
Me too.
Okay, with the personalized glass.
Red wine.
Stop.
What you got? Okay. I'm breaking up the monotony. I have peach tea.
Okay.
Just peach tea. It's in a wine glass.
All right. That'll work.
Yes.
You say you got peach tea, Mary?
I do. I started to spike it, but I decided to go without spiking this evening. So I guess getting back to the conversation, we're trying to figure out like the what makes the conversation difficult, and then we were going to jump into skills, or like Carissa, you had asked the question.
Unfortunately, I don't remember what that question was.
That's that wine. That's that wine.
Wine in there?
I only had 3 sips.
I don't know. We can't tell right now.
3 sips. That's the question.
I hardly drink anymore, so on Friday nights it be hitting me hard.
So let's just recap really quickly. Some of the things that we came up with that have been difficult is talking about finances, talking about sex and intimacy, talking about I think I mentioned grief, but we talked about medical issues. And then the comment came in that women are always thinking that they're very good at changing a man, and then vice versa. We of course flipped it, and vice versa, and thinking that you're going to get the outcome that you want because they just won't mind. Like midway, you changed your mind, but you haven't had that conversation for them to like really change their mind as well. I mean, to agree with what the new idea or the new pathway is. So forever. See, that's odd.
What?
Saying forever.
April, you.
Okay. What would you add to that group of things that we could easily take any direction to go into?
You listed finances, sex, intimacy, grief, medical issues,
finances,
child rearing,
child rearing.
Educational goals. Like if you want to continue your education or pursue a different career,
or start a business.
Yeah, start a business. You need that support, and usually that's deserves conversation as well as a lot of conversation, especially if I'm hearing backfeed.
So turn your computer volume down.
All right. Okay. So originally a part of the plan, or it wasn't discussed early, and all of a sudden you want to do a career change, and like I don't want to do this job, or I may not want to work at all. I want to go back to school. So,
right.
Yeah. I think what you were saying, Mary, is very valid too. That if you don't want to have these conversations, and why they are so difficult, could lead to the idea that you don't trust your partner. You don't trust that they are going to be responsive or supportive or empathetic, or you know you're afraid to be vulnerable with them, and that's a issue within itself.
And that's a part of the shutdown that we try to avoid. Not, people don't always recognize the vulnerability that comes with the process of talking about things that are comfortable for them, but not necessarily comfortable for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you should. Well, I hate throwing out
You
shoulds.
should, right?
I hate throwing out them shoulds, but it is beneficial to be in a partnership where you feel like you can tell your partner anything,
Right.
and that makes many conversations less difficult, because you're saying to yourself, I know that if I tell him or her this or that, they're going to at least try to understand my position.
Mm-hmm.
You hope.
You hope.
Yeah, you hope.
You hope.
And people don't usually plan for the part about it that they strongly hope for, that when it goes left, what is the alternative way to bring their partner back to the table, or to say, okay, let me go do some more research, or get some more information, or what is it that you would need for this decision to go better? Like, what makes it uncomfortable for you? They don't ask that. They be like, this is my plan. This is what I want to do. This is what it's going to look like. And I'm throwing it down your throat.
Yes. I get a picture when you say that. I get a picture of Carrie on King of Queens. This is how it's going to go down. And that's it.
Some people are not used to having basic conversations. So that's the difficult part.
Right.
They're not even used to listening.
Just
like, people listen to speak, not to understand. It's always a comeback. So if you've never had to really truly listen, you're not going to be comfortable with anything. It's going to be defensive.
Right. That is so very true.
Yes.
What if you just have your mind so made up that this is what I want to do? I'm finally going to do it, and he or she is either there for me or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem.
Because that's at you. But you see, that just stuck me all types of ways.
But a lot of times the conversation can go ahead.
Go ahead. No, can't. Go ahead, can't.
No, I was just saying, a lot of times the conversation can get uncomfortable. I remember my 20s, maybe up until maybe a couple of years ago, I had already made the decision. I was just talking to you to say I'll talk to you, but my mind was already made up. I gave you the courtesy of coming to tell you. You could have found out in the street, but I'm grown.
In the street.
So, I mean, I love you and everything.
So they had to fit in your plan.
But
wait a minute, she just gave a shoulder shrug, like.
Well, that's the thing. My plan, you can either roll with it or not. It's still the plan.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. In my 20s, I just.
So you said up until a couple years ago. So what changed for you a couple years ago that now it looks differently?
The hardest thing I've ever had to do ever in my life is extend the same grace and mercy to others, extend that to my mate. Because a lot of times we talk to people nice in the street than we do the person we live with. I'm rude, straight to the point, straight up. But it's not I had to remember, it's not it is a business transaction, but it's not business. It's business, but it's not business. Right. So you have to be like, you know what? I've never been very compromising because I'm grown. So I felt like I need to work. That was the hardest thing I still work on is extending the same grace and mercy to him than I would to anybody else, which is very small anyway for anybody else. Kind of like a one and done type of person. But I'm forgiving. I mean, I forgive you from afar, but I just know, shame on me. Like, I'm just like, I'm flexible, but I ain't called to be dumb.
Right.
So I just think for me, it was more so like how you treat others is what you get back. But I've always gotten, when it came to my husband, I feel like mostly positive back. So it was more so like I had to grow up. I had grew up in other areas. It's just an area that I had to grow up in. Because when you from a single parent home, I'm from a blended family. I've had two parents. I've had one. Many different situations. So I think it was more so like the difficult part of it is just having that conversation and being like, I'm not telling you, we're discussing this, I'm asking. So that's where I'm like, I gotta ask this. I gotta ask who?
She gonna say this.
Right.
The only person I'm trying to ask, I prayed about it before I came to you. I prayed about it. In my heart, God told me it is what it is. So I'm coming to you. And hopefully what you
blame it on God.
Not.
Right.
No, not. But it's just sometimes like my walk in life is not your life, even if I'm married to you. It's just sometimes it don't end up being that way. So that's the difficult part of it. So we've always had the same goal, but always had different ways of getting there. So when it's like, oh, this is my way or the highway, that don't work for me. You're not my grandmother.
But some people, that's their whole method, is my way or the highway. And then if you don't become bendable, flexible, and accommodating, then it's like, okay, well, I'm out. Like they don't want to stay, and they may not even be physically out, but emotionally they have disconnected.
Emotionally unavailable, yeah. But my thing is, if you like, Mayor, you talked about the bending and twisted. I done already bending and twisted because I didn't already have to sit here and listen to this conversation. So I done already had to compromise something already. My time. Time is money, money is time. So, what are we talking about again? Let's get to the point. So for me, when people drag our conversations, I be like, tell me what you really want to tell me so I can make the choice of what I need to do based on what you're trying to do. If you're not trying to go where I'm trying to go, what's the point? I just need to cut my losses.
So if there's anyone that's like looking or listening and trying to figure out, like, if they live the lifestyle that Camp has just described, then how is your partner supposed to approach you with information? Like, how do they learn to talk to you in your love language, or in the space that makes you feel comfortable, that it's not going to break our relationship up, or we're not going to be like, well, you sleep in the living room tonight or downstairs, or however your house is configured, because we're not on the same page anymore.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say you would have to start within, because at some point you have to realize that you are pushing someone possibly beyond their boundaries. And that is, that conflict itself is difficult to manage. So you have to search within yourself to see, how far am I willing to compromise? What can I give up so that, especially if you feel like that relationship is worth continuing. So it's in short, I think you just have to meet the person halfway, compromise, communicate. I think you have to search within.
Right. Right. And that search within is a lot. That goes to that whole trust thing again. What you got, Doc?
And now I'm just thinking about what April said about, that compromise. That's a really big piece of having these difficult conversations. Because if you are of the mind that, this is what it is and I'm not going to change it, then why even have a conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Like Cam said, I'm just coming to tell you what it is. That's it. I'm letting you know.
Right. But everybody
Yeah.
ain't gonna receive that the right way. They're gonna be like, you letting me know. Like, we gotta think about how childcare is gonna be, how the house is gonna function, how, so many different things in which, you gotta pay attention to. Hey Tanya. I was about to say, hey Pop. We gotta pay attention
Hi.
to everything that that your decision is impacting, and you on this I team. Like, when did it become I?
Mm-hmm.
It gotta be a week.
It's never really been an I.
Huh?
I said, yeah, I totally agree with you. Even though I am,
This is the
I also
2 year
think about
improved you.
yes, it is. New and improved. I say he knows. My husband knows who he married, but like you said, at the same time, it is a we. But that's the thing. We've always agreed on everything, but sometimes the individual goals. I have a thing where I have individual goals, but if they don't fit with the rest of the family, they just have to wait, and I'm okay with that. I'm fine. So I think we both go back and forth because you have to. Sometimes you got to compromise and be like, okay, so it's your turn to either do a new business or travel, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But it's like, even in saying it's your turn, if the person is not prepared to take their turn, it's like, you telling me on what circumstance and how it is that I'm supposed to compromise on what calendar date. Like, it should still be a joint conversation that has mutual sacrifice. So sometimes when we say 50-50, that may not be mutual sacrifice, because in a relationship, shouldn't you be giving 100% to the relationship, and then your partner is also giving 100%? If you start at 50, it's already a deficiency that you guys don't agree on how things are going to work.
Yeah. And sometimes you
That's a
have to
good
give
point.
up. Yeah, that's a good point. Because and sometimes you have to give up more, or your partner has to give up more. I mean, if you're the person that's making the most money, but you decide now I want to go back to school, then that's a conversation, because now now your spouse or your mate is like, hold up, we're about to go down. Like,
right. But also, I don't like. I had family members who were in a situation. Every time that partner took a sacrifice, it was like counting coins. For example, like counting money. And then every time they got in an argument, the other person would bring up their mate would bring up, well, I did it. Like, if you don't count coins, I can be by myself and count single coins.
Right.
So, like, it's just like if you're gonna make the sacrifice, I feel like it's a choice. Just like you choose to be with that person, you choose to compromise, you choose to get along. But if you're gonna be counting crumbs and everything, little thing you did for me, oh, I ran your bath for I put the kids to bed. I can pay somebody to do all that. Like,
that's why mutual sacrifice is a real conversation for couples and partners, because it's not going to equal into dollars and cents, and it shouldn't be a conversation. I'm using the word shouldn't. I know I should not. However, like, that shouldn't be what measures the mutual sacrifice. But if you are the breadwinner that is like really holding things down, and you know that salary absent of yours is not going to maintain the lifestyle that you guys are accustomed to, then that's a real conversation. Okay, how long is this transition going to happen? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the things that we are going to sacrifice and not be involved with during this time period. Like, we gotta be real clear and real specific. What activities can the children participate in? Which ones do we need to scale back? And when we talk about it, are those little self-care, self-management things that we do they need to be taken off the table? And are you going to still be sustainable in the absence of those type of things?
Yeah, because if you're not working, you can't be saying, hey, I'm going to go get a massage today. Like, hold up, wait a minute.
What if you have medical issues? That massage is a way of life. It helps you do things
Well, then you
independently
I
share
without
get
being
it.
work.
involved.
I get it, but
Then
then
you
your
need to
spouse,
share work
your
and bring
right,
home
your
the
partner,
coin.
exactly. Your partner said you need to not quit your job so that you can get these massages.
Right.
I feel you. So I know when I had to sacrifice, I learned. I'm a jack of all trades. I just learned how to do stuff my own. Pedicure, hair, manicure, cut grass, whatever I got to do to make the
Ain't nobody got time for
to
all of
see the.
that. It's somebody that
I'm
provides that
just
service.
saying. I'm just saying, but
But
I
she
knew
had a
it was
plan.
real.
She did. That's her
Say it
plan.
again.
Yes, I'm not taking away your plan. I guess I'm saying it wouldn't work for me. Like it's somebody that went to school and learned how to do all of that. Yep.
Yeah, but I knew it
And
was
Tanya
real
is
one
correct.
time.
You build a resentment.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
true.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes, it can for sure, especially if your partner is going along because you told them what's going to happen.
Told.
Told them.
Mm. Wow.
That
Mhm.
is
Yes.
So
true.
you gave them less
You
power.
got to be ready for that
You took
comeback,
away some of their
the
power that
pushback.
they had in the relationship, and that's
Yep.
currency. You
Yep.
know, we don't people don't think about how influential certain words play a part because they have different meaning. When you said earlier, can't ask, I'm coming to ask you. I already prayed about it. Why I gotta ask you? I'm just giving you the memo to update you. But
Mhm.
asking
Right.
is like, okay, but I'm grown. Yes, you're grown, but you're in a partnership. Your decisions
Mhm.
impact and influence everything that happens within our house. And I'm not trying to shut you down or take you off the plate, but let's
Right.
talk about
Mhm.
it. Let's
Mhm.
talk about it.
Yeah, and when you talk about it, you get the opportunity to see all of the other consequences or possible consequences that you didn't think about.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, because all you see is your goal and what you want.
Right. Right. Which could be very challenging and difficult.
Hmm.
And
And it
cause
can be
that
very
resentment.
one-sided, very
Yeah.
one-sided.
Which will become not only resentful, but it becomes selfish in your way of thinking how the family is going to, you don't think they're going to be impacted negatively because you're thinking about the outcome of when things go well with that particular goal. But there's a growing period, period of every new goal in regards to managing just life.
Mm.
Hmm.
And you can't be like, well, you just gonna live with it because this is the decision. No, we need to talk about it.
Hmm.
And you might need to talk about it, maybe bringing the entire picture of the goal. You have to know your partner. Maybe the entire picture is too much. So to create that balance, like let's have bite-sized plant the seed type conversations. Like when you plant your garden, it's different steps that you do to make sure that that garden is going to be nurtured and prepared to receive the conversation or to receive those beautiful flowers. You have to look at your conversation between your partner and your family. The children, at some point, if you are a family, a couple that has children, the children need to also be involved in this conversation because them asking questions about can we go roller skating with our friends on Friday night might become a very stressful question if you've made a mutual sacrifice to give up your self-care. They can't have self-care either. Like,
Hmm.
hopefully that's not.
Oh, this conversation is touching too close to home.
Ah, that's what you
I
said in
I
the
can I
comments.
can
Now you
relate
on
to
a
camp.
panel.
Huh?
What happened? I said that's what you said in the comments. Now you on a panel.
I know. I can relate to camp. When my ex and I were together, my first child, I was so adamant about her first year not being in daycare. And I was determined to take off from work for a whole year. So that means not
Oh
two
wow.
salaries in the home, but just one. But
Mm,
I'm like, I got it. It's a year. I calculated everything. I had the plan laid out, and I had it in my mind that um, whether he agreed or not, I was taking
mhm,
off. You know, but
mhm,
in the long run, it did cause that resentment because I mean, financially we were okay. I was okay because I was caring for my daughter that first year, no one else. And then
mhm,
so I felt it was and that was his argument. Well, who's gonna help pay for these bills? And I'm like, well, you know, I got it. I saved up my money so that I can be out for a whole year. So that
Mm.
shouldn't be an issue. So I had my solution, but there was still resentment,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
caused some
even hearing you say it, you using my and I.
yes. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could just use that as an example, and I thank you because that's a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
that that's something else. When we have those conversations, we can be like, oh, just the way you present it shouldn't be a my or I. These are
Right.
the things that I considered help
Right.
me understand what else needs to be in the plan. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you've taken the financial burden off the table because you've saved for that advanced pre-planning,
Mm-hmm.
then what else is it that we need to consider?
Right.
If you come
Right.
to the table, well, I did this,
Um,
my child, and this is the way it's going to happen, and I got it covered. Then that
Mm-hmm.
person is going to abandon you, and you're going to have to make sure that it's all covered the way you said.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when you said what else you had to think about, I'm just thinking about feelings, emotions,
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, your mood. Like, just I'm not walking on eggshells. I just can't. Um, but what I will say, I think when you talked about like, oh, you got this, it's gonna be on you.
Right.
It's a balance. I just learned because I
Somebody wrote
got
that
three
in
now.
the
I just
comments
learned.
too.
I learned I
Powerful.
just couldn't. How can I say this?
Say it, Camp. Just
I
say
just
it.
really had to think
Put it out
about.
there.
Yeah, when I try to think about it, it comes out all wrong. I just think either way. I just had to think about him as being a man and me being
Mm.
married to him and he being the head of the household. So I had to get away from what I learned, see, what I saw. I had
Mm-hmm.
to get away from what I saw. It was like even if you were married, the man didn't matter.
Mm.
Not to me, but like what I saw growing up. It was kind of like, oh, they just there's you know how you have a trophy wife? They just there's an orange piece just to say you're married. They don't really have a function.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different thing. But when certain decisions were made in the family, all the women gathered in the kitchen and you just talked about it with the women and they relayed the information to the husband. So,
Ooh.
I don't think that's the right way to do things, but just had to get out of that, like breaking that cycle.
Well, that's awesome. Hey, Ned,
And
thank you for
also
joining us.
But you're right. That
and just
some
involving him in the
people,
process.
yeah, some people make decisions like that, men and women. It's like their
Yeah.
spouse is just there, and you make your decisions, I make my decisions, and not even talking about how your decisions affect me, how my decisions affect you.
Right. Oh, you not finished? That was
Yeah,
a good sentence.
That that was it.
there was. I was waiting. I thought she had
I
something
don't
else.
know what else she gonna say. Wait a minute.
And I also had to
Can I?
learn. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, LaJoya.
I feel like it could have been resentment, but it wasn't. In my 20s, he never told me no.
Hmm.
He
Mm.
never told me no.
Mm.
And when he told me no for the first time, like really told me no and meant that, I was like, whoa, I gotta change how I communicate a little bit. I gotta switch this up.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only agreement, the nonverbal agreement, the only thing is if I was going somewhere or doing something, it didn't matter as long as I cooked dinner. It was like a thing. As long as there was food in the house. I would order food as I'm walking out the door. I have 3 boys, so it was always, I didn't have to worry about babysitters or just certain things. Because it was just like, I'll be back when I get back. I'll do this. But my husband is almost a decade older than me, so he was just like, I'm gonna let you do you and live your life a little bit, let you see it. This is what I've been talking about. Like I had a career, had money in the bank, had a car, had degrees. It wasn't about that. It was really about like working together as a person. That's the hardest thing I have to do. Not communicate, but actually be like,
Team.
so it's not hard for us to have a conversation. It's always hard for me to sit down and be like, can we please talk? talking all together.
Usually that'll make somebody say they shutting down. You say, "Can we please talk?" or "We need to talk." That's it.
We have the conversation, and he's like, "Oh, we have to talk." I was like, "Yeah." I said, "I don't want to, but I know we have to." It's not the conversation piece. It's just me actually being like, "Okay, let's do this together."
I actually feel that what you're saying, LaJoy, because I didn't get married till I was 38. So I had a long life of doing whatever I wanted, when I wanted to, and how I wanted, and living by myself.
Right.
So yeah, I feel you. It was the one of the hardest things I ever had to do. Is to start considering somebody else.
Right.
Consider when I think about considering somebody else, I'm considering my child.
Not your mate.
I'm talking about, like, I'm just saying, like, I had to bring myself out of that. Like, I consider, like, so I understand that I'm a teenager, so I understand that he comes first, not the kids. And I was like, oh, the kids come first? No, because I don't want my life be these kids. They walk out the door, and I'm like, I'm sitting next, talking to a stranger. I don't know you. So we're very adamant of having our own time and being like, no, when we're talking, you bet not dare interrupt me, even if I don't want to have this conversation, even if I want the kids to walk in and be like, save me. Right. That I have to be like, no, I'm talking to your father. You have to walk out the room. You did not say excuse me. You did not knock on my door. You did not ask the clearance. So you have none. So that's a respect factor too. He comes first. People like, nah, no, he comes first. Like, no, make the kids play first, no problem. But he comes first in terms of, like, the decisions we make together, in terms of, you know, what goes on with the kids, just certain things. Like, that's always been that way in terms of, like, us needing to, like, hunker down and do things. But they get it. Like, we had to teach them because they thought it's like, oh, they talking, oh, it's free reign. No, that's not how it works.
Right. So it also helps when children are trying to learn to negotiate situations. If they've seen the adults in their life negotiate conflict and talk through difficult conversations, that they might have heard your voices become elevated or whatever, but they're able to see how you came to a resolve. Because no matter what it is that you teach them and tell them, when they get out there in the streets of school, back in the days when we had school, they will model that same thing of what it is that they saw, not what you told them.
Right.
So and I'm glad you brought up the word conflict, because I think conflict has such a negative connotation that people shy away from it. And that's when you get people who say, well, I don't argue. I don't like to argue, when they're not really thinking that conflict doesn't have to be negative.
And it don't have to be an argument.
It doesn't have to be an argument.
It doesn't. And I'm the one, I don't like a lot of conflict, but people be like, you always up in somebody's face. No, I'm standing my ground, but I really don't like to go back and forth with people. But people make me. So when it comes to, like,
they make you, they shake you and be like, you gonna go back and forth with me.
So for me, when somebody, so the triggers for me, somebody's yelling at me, sometimes Black people naturally have loud voices. But if I feel like the tone and the elevation, I'd be like, I'll walk away. So I have to think about where I'll keep my tone even across. But if you start that, yeah, and I'm like, excuse me, I'm here. I said, until you can talk to me like a regular person,
right?
We will not have this conversation. So for me, that's with anybody. And people are like, what? I'm like, I don't want to be taken there. There's no coming back. And I mean every word I say. So
definitely
even tempered.
So I was going to say that I think that people have to get away from the idea that conflict is bad.
Right.
And that'll help you have these hard conversations.
The growing pains. I think conflict helps you grow, actually.
It does.
Like it does.
It does. Yes, it does. It really does. And it helps build bonds. It helps you to learn to be vulnerable.
That's so hard.
All those things are important for good relationships.
And you would think that, well, no, we've been taught, not so much you would think, we've been taught that we're not supposed to be vulnerable on any circumstance of life. And
Right.
because we've been taught, that's a part of the cycle that we have to break
Especially
when,
Black women.
Amen.
because they don't know how to speak to individuals or people who they feel are very significant to them. And it becomes, they be like, well, why the person don't like me no more? Because you didn't know how to really present yourself, that you weren't being defensive and reactive. You was coming at the person. Like I recently I saw these teenagers, and the young lady was with her boyfriend. He was there being very respectful and everything. And then she come to him and put her finger up to his head like this. And I'm just like, okay, he not gonna stay. Like he's not gonna stay at all, because his energy that he's bringing to you is calm and receptive. But what you are giving back to him, it is totally different, and is not really respecting his presence.
True.
Mhm.
I
But
would have been her
learned
favorite.
that somewhere. I don't know if it's one of them TV shows or stuff, or in the house. I don't know, but it might be.
Mhm.
Yeah. Those fingers
Yeah,
would have been.
we're often taught to not be vulnerable. I mean, I said especially Black women, but Black men too
Yeah.
are
Mm-hmm.
taught that vulnerability is weak.
Or for
Mm-hmm.
suckers.
What'd you say, Kim?
I said, or for suckers.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what. Like that's where I was just like just straightly like those words.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yes, yes,
And
yes.
y'all,
You
You
y'all
know
can
how
tell
Du Bois
Rico
man
comment.
was.
He said it's interesting
Yes.
listening to the women of four women's perspective, because I'm sure that men think it is totally different. You know, like as far as being vulnerable, how it is that they do decision making, compromise, like all of that. Because I don't know, I just think they just probably have a whole different perspective on things.
Mm-hmm. I
Men are
agree with
taught to
you.
be
And it's like
strong.
we don't always put people in the same room, you know, to even like when you're in that dating stage, or when you're getting to know somebody. It's like we don't have those shared conversations that represent how you show up and how you identify with your gender. And because we don't, we just said we got break cycles. So it's like, in you breaking the cycle of how it is that you exist, that might look way different. Because if you're looking at the men that may or may not have been present for you in your life, you may not realize that you're looking for your partner to be that same role, and they may be 365 different, or 360 different. I'm sorry, I don't know why I did
Okay.
365.
So I'm looking at the comment. Del Rico said we definitely can't show any weaknesses. Um, I that doesn't sit well with me,
Okay.
because and I'll use a personal experience again. My son came to me the other day, and we were having a conversation, and he was just saying how in society they are taught, even at the young age, that they can't be weak. You know,
Mm,
they like their emotions don't count. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
so wrong. We're just setting them up for, a level of failure in
because they don't
relation.
have a space that they can feel safe to talk about anxiety, to talk about
Yeah,
depression, to talk
yeah,
about the things that they're struggling with. Yeah.
yeah. So I think you know, I think we need to stop that. I certainly had further conversation with him at that point to let him know that, your emotions count,
Right.
and say it.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. He said from vulnerabilities will be used against them, and some of us as women, we count them as we'll tag them as being punks or the P word.
Hmm.
And
And we really shouldn't do that, but that would be an
yeah,
example of what I was just talking about with the teenager.
Yep.
The young man was coming nice and respectful,
yeah,
and he said it. And he said it so calm too. Who are you talking to like that?
right.
And she's all, I'm like, where did that come from?
Good
Like,
for
where's
him,
my
though.
teenager?
Good for
Huh?
him. Good for
Yeah,
him.
yeah, definitely. But I
You
was like,
have to
he's not
learn
going
to
to
find.
stay in that relationship if that continues to go on that way. And I don't know if the
Mm-mm.
young lady was trying to show off for her friends who were also in the room. But whatever it was, I just looked at the whole male female dynamic and was like, that's not going to work at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So whew, when you start realizing that you are shutting your partner down, though, how can you pull back? How can you like say, okay, well, let's come back to this conversation in a different way? Or, how can you regroup so that you don't harm the emotionality of everything?
Say or do exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, just say do exactly that. Let me just come back. Let this. If he shuts down, it's time to take a break.
Mm-hmm. What if you shut down and you're the one that's facilitating the conversation? You shut down because you're reading their body language, or their body language doesn't like seem receptive, or you think that what you're about to say, they're really going to react to it in some particular way. And you like, okay, yep, I want to abandon this, but they're all ears and ready to support you.
Ooh. That means I have to go get a Dr. Pepper or something.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Like, it's weird, but like Dr. Pepper for me is very medicinal. It's just soothing. I can just get Dr. Pepper and be like, I got this. I get this like encouragement. Let me handle this. Sometimes you just gotta work your way through things. It can be so hard. That's how you get through it. You have to. Sometimes you can't base it on how you feel or what you don't want. You have to just get it done.
Right.
So yeah, that's happened to me before. That can be very hard.
Yeah. So it's like,
I think.
You think?
Go ahead, Joy. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. It's fine. I didn't know if somebody was gonna say something. Go ahead.
So your question is, if you've started the conversation and you start to shut down, but he wants to be supportive.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what you want, though? I'm confused.
But you may get fearful of rejection, that you feel that although they are receptive, but you think they may reject what you're saying. So then you say, you know what, never mind. And then that makes the partner frustrated because you started the conversation and then now you're putting a pause button on it. And they're like, what?
So there was some type of apprehension about bringing it to the table in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That wouldn't be me if I'm if I'm bringing something to the table and he's agreeing with it. Okay, then that's what I want. That's my goal, to get something that we both agree on. But pull it back and say, well, I don't know, you're agreeing with me. To me, I don't know. That seems passive aggressive to me.
But if you're a person who self-sabotages, you right on target.
Okay. All right. You're right.
You're like, okay, you agreeing? Wait a minute. I didn't think you was gonna agree. I thought you was gonna shut down, close the door, and make me continue to say I can't push forward. But now that you like agreeing that I can push forward, oh no, yeah, I'm not ready to finish this conversation.
I feel like it's a form of self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Or it sounds like you're used to this person not agreeing with you. And when they start agreeing, you think something's going on.
They must be about to leave me, so they don't even care. I have heard this in sessions. So
I have too. Yes. That's why I said you think something going on.
Right.
Like, starting to agree. Yeah. Yes. And that brings up another situation, because when do you allow for your partner to change? Like if Camp's husband was to be like, I know how this gonna go, and just never and just never, never change the way he interacts with her, or and she never changes.
Mm-hmm. Because she called the delivery people as she walked out the door, like deuces.
Right, right, right.
In my 20s.
So
I sure
yeah,
did.
like, if she one day say, all right, I'm gonna go to him and talk to him, and we gonna sit down and talk about this change, and he be like, huh, what is happening, you cheating on me?
Right.
So
Nah.
yeah, like, when do
Right.
you, yeah, so I mean, I think relationships are so fluid, and I think a lot of times we really try to map it out in such a way that we get stuck
Mm-hmm.
and don't allow for things to change in
Right.
ourselves or our partners, which is
Right.
how couples get stuck in ruts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or they're so busy focused on the functioning of the house with children in it that when the children have begun their own lives and then have moved on, you're like, okay, well, who are you again? I know we shared space together, but like, who are
Mhm.
you? And they may not be the person that they was before children.
Mhm.
Sometimes we
Yeah.
just want to focus on the children intentionally.
True. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. You're
So we
right.
gonna
Yeah.
fix our
Some.
marriage or
Yep.
fix the problems in our relationship?
What's that?
I said sometimes I was agreeing with you, but sometimes people do that intentionally so they don't have to
Yeah.
have the conversation or they don't have to fix what they
Yep.
need to. They don't
Yep.
have to be accountable or fix what
Right.
they need to. Oh, I heard the baby crying. Let me go pick the baby. Let
Yep.
me go make the
Yep.
bottle.
Yep.
Right.
The baby's
Yep.
crying.
Yep.
I'm gonna sleep in the room with the baby tonight.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Children
Ah,
are children are a great
right.
distraction from difficult
Yes.
conversations.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And then especially if it's like something financial or about sexual intimacy or whatever, be like, did I hear the baby call me? Wait a minute. Let me go over
Mhm.
there.
We'll put the
And
baby right between you and the ex.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Yes.
telling too much.
But yeah, people
we
do
won't
that
tell.
all
We
day.
won't tell.
Yes, people use children all the time,
It's not good.
and often
Or not
when the
children, your
kids
grandmother.
leave, often when the kids finally leave,
The
like
grandmother
Mary
got.
said, you're sitting here with a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for example, oh, grandma need groceries. I gotta run out real quick. The snow's coming. It's supposed to be raining a lot. I'm just saying.
They not going to get grandma groceries. They going to get a different type of groceries.
I
Or
think
they
she
going to
said you
go
saying that you
to
just want to get away. You just want to get
yeah.
away.
Okay. Thank you. Because I was about to go somewhere all the way.
I think you just want to get away.
Well, Mary, that too. That too.
Right.
That too.
That wasn't it, but it could be.
And I think that's where we started this whole thing about difficult conversations when we were talking about cheating the last couple weeks.
Absolutely.
How do
Right.
you bring up that conversation? Look, I'm not satisfied in XYZ way,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I might need to seek satisfaction somewhere else.
But even before it becomes the cheating or seeking a satisfaction somewhere else, why not invite your partner to do different things that's going to spice it up, or introduce those different
Yes,
things that's going to spice it up and be of whatever this new interest is.
of course.
So you don't have to come home and then they say, well, where you been that you learned how to do all this, that, and the third? Let's learn
But
it
those,
together.
but those are difficult conversations too. You
They are.
know, I
Some
want
Especially when
I
you
want
your own
XYZ, but we've been together 10 years. Why you need that? You know,
right. I mean,
where
it's a
is this
conversation.
coming from?
Right. Right.
Right.
It's
That
coming from,
conversation needs to be had.
Yes, yes,
but your sexual stamina changes as your relationship seasons.
of course.
So, you said you were how old, Doc, when you got married? Like 38?
38.
So, like, it's a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know you per se. I mean, I do, but I don't know you per se in regards to this applying to. But at 38, there's things that have been explored, but once you knock on that door of 40 plus, it's a whole nother conversation.
Yes,
And
it is.
and it's like, then when you get to, the other side of those 40s and into other numbers, you begin to say, okay, well, wait a minute. Is my partner ready, open, and receptive to this new way of life? And that definitely is a conversation that would shut somebody down, because it's like, okay, well, we was together all these other years, and this level of conversation was never needed. Why now? Right.
Well, so are you saying there's new conversations I have to look forward to once I turn 40?
Child, it's a memo of stuff that people don't tell you.
Yes.
It's a memo.
Okay, okay.
And then the memo gonna change again at 45.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, a lot of women in my age group say that their best sexual life came in their 40s.
Nice.
Yes.
Did I see some thumbs up?
So I guess I have to wait 4 more years.
Yes. You think that you may have conquered and achieved some things, but no,
I haven't. I ain't. I mean,
it's gonna be different in a
You'll be
positive
all
way,
right. You'll be all
as
right.
long as you have the open-minded
You'll be
partner.
fine.
oh, I'm very open-minded, so I think
I know you are, but I'm just saying for the audience, they have to make sure that they have an open-minded partner as they mature in their levels of intimacy, in their levels of how they want to receive their sexual interactions and give their sexual reactions. So everything, has a stage. It's a give and receive situation.
I get it.
I think you become a little bit more open after you turn 40.
Right.
Depending on how you live 20s and 30s, but
right.
It depends. But your open still could be open. It's just a different level. It's levels to
exactly.
I think you know yourself better.
Yes.
And you're more comfortable with yourself.
You're more confident too.
More confident, yes.
And I don't want people to get confused, because we said that this was, how do you have difficult conversations? But usually if you can't communicate verbally with your partner, it definitely impacts other aspects of your relationship that definitely lead to your intimacy with someone, or how it is that you care and love someone. So be it with you and your child, you and your partner, you and whoever it is that you care for at that highest level, at the core of everything, finances, grief, sexual preferences, anger, conflict, compromise, all of it is communication.
You're right.
And you have to break sometimes those cycles of what you have been taught.
Yep.
And make sure that they're applicable to who it is and how it is that you show up every single day in 2020, 2021, however many years we got, going forward.
Yeah, because I just think about this now. I used to tell him, I started telling him this a couple years ago. I'd be like, this is the most I ever liked you. Like, it's a total person. Not a piece, but it's a total. And I'm like, I could be with him. We've been, been in quarantine, I guess, 7 months around COVID. And I'm like, if this had happened I was like, if this had happened like 5 or 6 years ago, I probably would have to move back in my own apartment. But I'm just like, now it's just like, oh, this is adorable. It's just like, it's like butter. It's real smooth. But for different people, it has not been that way, because you've had to been together, but all these years with this, now you've had to confront stuff you never had to confront before. So it really, you really see your relationship for what it is. What I'm trying to
say. That's true.
Right.
So how do you make sure that you're starting a difficult conversation in the right way? And how do you guide it so that both people feel heard and you come to a conclusion that's a win-win for you both?
That's a great conversation. That's a great question.
That's a great question. But okay, so when you say win-win for both, a lot of times these conversations, I feel like, don't win-win for both. So that's even hard to navigate.
Explain.
Because one person may, I feel like one person may feel like they have to give up more or they're giving up something.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Like I'm not. So for me personally, I wouldn't be looking for it to be 50-50. Sometimes it's
100,
20-80.
100.
It should be 100-100. I'm saying both people, certain things need to be in agreement with what's being done, but I think deep down, part of the conversation would have to be how you truly feel about it, even if you're agreeing
Yes.
to agree. But people don't always talk about like they're agreeing, but are they actually talking about how they feel in the moment about the situation, how they really their true feelings deep down?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So it could also stunt the conversation, and you might not get to that win-win that day. Maybe an ongoing
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Like I know, for me personally, I've had conversation that lasted years. It's levels. It's like pulling back, like piece after piece after piece. Like you get tired of having the same conversation, and it's not a
Mm-hmm.
win. Just sometimes it's just I'm sorry, it is what it is, and you either live with it or you don't. It depends on who you're married to, your partner, where you live. It just has a lot of factors. So even that is just not simple as it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, not every solution is going to be where each person feels like they want. There's a win-win in it,
Mm-hmm.
and those are the situations where you say, "All right, you get it this time, I get it next time."
Mhm.
You
I think
know,
the
there.
win for me is just being heard. That would be the win-win.
Yeah, yes, of course. So, I mean, when I'm doing, couples counseling, I try to have them do something where you have your initial stance, your partner's initial stance, and then you go into, the reasons. Each of you talk about your reasons for
Mhm.
your stance on a particular subject. And
Mhm.
then you look at where you can compromise, where
Mhm.
each of you can compromise in your stance,
Mhm.
you know, so that you come to a new conclusion at the
Right.
end of at the end of the conversation where
I
Right.
both
like
of
to
us
say the
got
new
some of what we wanted.
Right.
mm,
And I'm thinking when I meet with couples, I usually have them do a life stressors scale. And they'll be like, well, do we both have to do this? Absolutely. Because
Mm-hmm.
what you find is that what one partner has or identifies as a life stressor is different than the other partner. And they're not even aware that they have some differences as well as similarities. And sometimes it's totally different. I'm like, oh, we're going to be here a while.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps them to really put it on paper what some of those stressors are and
Mm-hmm.
prioritize them in a 1 through 5, and then begin to say, okay, well, what are the things that are of highest priority to you? And that sometimes is where people get stuck, but that's
Yeah.
where the meat and potatoes is of that conversation with the therapist.
Mm-hmm. Like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
that's a good way of
Yes.
looking at it from both of you.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I have some people who will say, we both have to fill this out. And I'm like,
Yes.
yes. I want to hear everybody's voice in the process and making sure that all concerns are on the table, because you didn't come here to just have the same conversation that you had coming in when you leave out, so
Right.
let's work this through.
I always get that question too. We both got to do it.
Right.
Yes.
Which shows like role assignment and how we, assign who's supposed to fill out paperwork and who's the one that
Mm-hmm.
pays and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's important information for somebody in a situation of trying to build compromise and mutual sacrifice. But like we have to undo some of that, give permission for grace
Mm-hmm.
so that we can grow and be better.
Okay. What are some of your opinions on how to start those conversations? I know for me, I like to use coming from a place of curiosity. So what do
Mm-hmm.
you think about me going back to school?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And then you get a conversation
Right.
about, and you usually get your partner's real thoughts at
Raw.
the
Good.
at the
Yeah.
beginning. Yes.
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 Yes, those open-ended questions of just like dropping that, like you just dropping the seed or dropping the mic in the middle of the conversation. Like, what do you think about if I was to start a business?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I'm saying, the seed planters, like, as far as you doing the conversations in parts or even as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
you get to gauge how they react and respond. And based on that, you be like, okay, well, the next time I drop the seed, I'm gonna have to make sure I got these 4 things covered because, did you see that response?
Mm-hmm.
The atmosphere got to be right.
They gotta be right. Make sure it was a nice meal made
Mm-hmm.
instead of ordering takeout and then walking out the door like Camp said.
I always do that.
But it does it does several things. It lets your partner know that you care about what they think.
Mm-hmm.
You value their opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and that you are considering that they're a part of this situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about you.
Exactly. Or I think a game of like dominoes or some dice, if you're playing spades or a card game, and you going back and forth talking spades, you be like, so what if this happened? Like
Mm-hmm.
that helps too, depending on what type of person you are. If you're playful, if you like, you know, hands
Right.
on. If I'm having a deep conversation, I like to be hands on, like to play like cards or just like a peaceful, relaxful, environment.
I get that. I know some people who use movies or TV shows.
Yes.
They'll put on a
I will
particular
recommend that
movie.
Oh,
sometimes.
that's a good
Yes,
one.
yes.
Mhm.
To put on a
Yep.
particular movie that has the situation that you're going through,
Right.
and then
Mhm.
you talk about it through the movie.
Right.
I was going to say you can use a family member or a friend and say, and create the hypothetical situation
Right.
using a family member or friend
Yeah.
just to see what they say. But you may not get their opinion, a true opinion, or an assessment rather, about you. They're really relating it to that person because they're considering
Right.
that person, their personalities, and so forth. But you can flip it and say, well, what if it was me? I
Yes.
thought about, or if it's a startup for a new business, they consider me as a partner. So
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
what are your thoughts?
Mhm.
So you got to be creative.
Yes. Yes.
And
You do
yeah,
have to be
Know your
creative.
partner.
Yep.
know your partner. Know what some buzzwords are, like the I and
Right.
the we, or, I versus we, or like. I thought about the children. I thought about us. What plans we had, or let's just revisit the blueprint that we had in place already. You
Right.
know,
Mm-hmm.
some
Yeah.
things that we've learned since we set up that plan. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to always be so structured. So if you're using music, if you're using movies, if you are playing Jenga, or you got some crazy rules in Uno, because everybody's rules for Uno is
I
different.
know.
Everybody,
Well,
you gotta be like, well, what's the house rules? Because I want to stay safe with this. you have
Right.
you have to always stay clear, and knowing what
Mhm.
the boundaries are and being respectful.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not
Very
time
important.
to go all the way negative and be like, well, we talking about finances. Well, I know what you need to do that's gonna help the finances now. That's not helping the process of having a successful conversation.
Not swipe
Mhm.
forward.
Mhm.
Be like,
And always, and we don't be using the always and nevers and
shoulds and that,
all
right.
those right. But I would say always listen. Always
Good one.
listen.
Not listening to respond, but listening
Right.
Right.
to truly
Just
hear what the person is
yeah.
saying.
Same.
Yes. Yes. And I love reflective listening.
Yeah.
I love that because it really shows that you're trying to understand what the person is saying. They feel heard, they
Mhm.
feel respected, they feel like you're trying to feel what they feel, especially when you throw some empathy in it.
Mhm.
It's like I understand what you're saying. I heard you say that XYZ, and I can see how that would make you feel frustrated. You know, I get a lot of people that say, "Oh, that feels so mechanical," but you know, practice makes it feel more comfortable,
More genuine.
more genuine. But it is so effective, so effective.
And the slippery slope of it too is, and this might be the conversation for another, segment, is not taking the role of the victim. A lot of times we have been so conditioned to just kind of fall into that role of being the victim of a situation and getting validation from that standpoint that it just changes the whole purpose and reason for us even being in this conversation. So it's like it's not the purpose to be the victim, and not even to take on the stance of victim blaming, victim shaming. This is the reason why certain people do this is the reason why you get this response. So you got to be very mindful that you don't fall into the victim space when you've made so much accomplishment to be vulnerable and to eliminate, the negativity that not having balanced communication can bring.
Victim, as in going to that place where you never listen to me, I never get my way.
Yes.
I always got to give up something.
Always got to give up something.
Okay.
Everybody always say, like those moments.
Yeah. Okay.
Nobody ever listens to me. I'm sitting there listening to you. I'm nobody now.
That's funny because I have used that. Like, what? Who am I?
Right. You cluttering me with everybody or nobody. Like, I'm living with you. What you mean?
And I think about The Color Purple, when Sophia talk about fighting her way through. I've heard people use something similar to that as well.
Yeah.
All my life.
All my life.
I'm just saying, I've heard people use it, and I'd be like, "Ooh, that's good acting."
You gotta break that cycle. So if you are using those always, never, shouldn't type statements, then that's when the reflection of how it's going to change for you to have positive outcomes for uncomfortable conversations is that you look in the mirror at yourself and see what role you play. Because it's not everybody else, you're the common denominator. So you got to take responsibility for how you contribute, and how you contribute is how you present it.
Personal too.
Huh?
You can't always take that personal. So it don't be about you.
It don't be about you. It don't be about. It be about they're telling you from their experience what they know, not necessarily that they indirectly trying to dig into how it is that you do stuff. They just tell you what it is that they know.
Yeah, you're right. And when you start taking things personally, it gets in the way of having these conversations because again, you feel victimized.
Yeah.
So now you got to defend yourself. And that doesn't bode well for a productive conversation.
No, you hit yourself up the same brick wall. Every time.
Yep. Every time.
And then also too, if the victim role has been something that's comfortable for you or had become comfortable for you as a child, you got to realize how that child voice shows up in your adult conversations. And again, breaking that cycle, because if you're not a child anymore, you need to be more responsible for that personal accountability to not use the voice of the child in these adult.
That's like white women's tears.
White woman skills?
No, I said tears. Like the example. No, like the example of like on the job. No, not skills. Like the example of the job. Like they're being told they're not doing something. Like something needs to be done, and oh my God, tears just come. Oh my God,
right.
And then the situation gets switched around, and they're off the hook
and projected to somebody else.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying an example. They're off the hook kind of behavior.
And since you brought up the child thing, Mary, I think And this is going to be definitely a conversation because we can, for another time, we can do a whole segment on it. Attachment styles. Your attachment styles
Ooh.
definitely have an effect on how you communicate with people as an adult.
Right.
Mm.
And they are cultivated when you're a child.
The level of
Okay,
need.
cultivated. Cultivated.
Need. I'm liking this attachment. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me write that
Mm-hmm.
big word down. It's like I'm joking.
But I think I like that topic. I've been talking to several folks about it more recently because they are seeing how their attachment styles are playing out in their
Mm-hmm.
marriages, in their current relationships with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's a good one.
And
So
you know the other part about the I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The other part about the whole attachment thing is that if your parents are still on this side of the soil, and you have a certain role that you play or played and have played in life, that you may not recognize how your attachment stuff shows up, and you're
Mhm.
rehearsing whatever role assignment that you have in the
Mhm.
family every
Mhm.
single time you enter into the living room of your parent, or every time your parent calls you, you end up going back into that attachment role assignment. And
Mhm.
then when you come out of whatever that interaction is, because it's not always a healthy interaction, but it's not always a negative one either, but
Right.
you end up projecting that stuff onto other people, but because you haven't shifted the gears and recognizing that the gears need to be shifted. Because you might not, if your parents are of age, you might be like, okay, well, they're not changing, so it's easier for me to just comply and be in this. But you have to have
Right.
some kind of code switching situation to say, okay, I ended the call. I'm no longer doing the task that my parent is asking of me. So let me, you know, go back to this new self that I've embraced and be productive, which is difficult because sometimes you get caught up and your mind is overthinking and you be like, oh, I got to do this towards everybody. And no.
Yeah, that can be hard.
Mhm. Now,
So
what were you going to say, April?
I was gonna I have an idea what you're referring to when you say attachment style, but could you go and maybe elaborate on the different styles of attachment or
Well, yeah, there are several styles of attachment. There's the secure attachment, which usually develops when you're a child and your needs are met
right.
as a child, usually all the way around. You know that you have people who love you and care about you, and you know, you form a real internal sense of security
Mhm.
where you can soothe yourself, you can
Right.
calm
Right.
yourself,
Okay.
you have emotional regulation,
Mm,
those kinds of things. But then there's an anxious style of attachment, there's an avoidant style of attachment, there's a disorganized style of attachment. And
Mhm.
those styles of attachment can really be dysregulating in
Right.
relationships because of how you present yourself to other people. If you're anxious, you want love and comfort, but you don't know how to accept that because
right,
you're
Mhm.
always thinking somebody's going to leave you.
right,
Mhm.
And ultimately you actually make them leave you because you're just so overbearing.
Right.
hmm
Right.
Talk
Like,
about
can you please tell me that you love me today? Can you please hug me? Can you please validate my thoughts and my
drive me
feelings?
crazy.
Again, I need you to tell me that this project was okay. Did I follow every direction?
No, that would drive me crazy. Right. Thank you.
Lord.
I'm not suggesting that anybody hits
Right.
anybody,
No violence.
especially not in October when it's Domestic Violence and
Violence. Yes.
Intimate Partner Awareness Month. We know that I'm an advocate, so no,
You're not promoting that.
not promoting that. But I'm like, okay, get yourself together. Shake out.
Right. Stand up for
hmm
yourself.
hmm
Mhm.
So I think we got like a communication is a loaded conversation. So this might be a safe place to kind of put our pause, and come back into this conversation some more next week. And hopefully we may have some male influence into the conversation because they definitely will add a layer that hasn't been represented totally here. So if we were to share a closing comment, what would that be?
I would say that
April be
don't.
whispering.
I would say
I'm so used to typing.
change 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 the negative connotation of conflict in your mind so that you'll be open to having conversations that are difficult on a regular basis. Because a lot of times if you feel like, oh, this is going to be an argument, or this is not going to be a good interaction, then you avoid them.
And what we tell
And
our brain is what it is.
right, exactly. So, change that first.
Mm-hmm.
Change that and know that conflict actually builds relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that would be my words.
Okay. Who's next?
Hmm.
You go, Mary.
Thank you.
I mean, we've covered so much. It's so hard to kind of just really capture like one particular thing. And I think I said what I would say is that realize that your communication styles may not always be the one that's receptive um, to your partner at that particular time. And so again, that reflection of how it is that you present things, or identify that this is the time to do this, that you need to be responsible to what you bring to the conversation, as well as knowing your partner.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
See, now I can't write the thing on the bottom.
I don't know if there's anything
I would
additional
say,
to add.
April,
I guess I
April,
would just say,
April.
Go,
I think I
Joya.
would just say create it.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
you saying something? Or?
No,
Mm-mm.
she
Oh,
whispering
I was
still.
just thinking. Oh, okay. I guess I would say just creative an atmosphere to be able to communicate and have those conversations.
Okay.
Create, I guess, like create something different, the opposite. Because if you do the same thing and get the same result, especially the result you're not looking for, that means you may have to examine how you're coming across. So
Mm-hmm.
create the atmosphere based on the solution you may want to see, or just a more positive outcome. And then I think that's half the battle sometimes. That's it.
So I think if you go into the conversation not expecting to a win,
Mm-hmm.
um, that is just go in a conversation, not expecting to win, and your goal should truly just be um, and to get an understanding, a mutual understanding. No one has to win. There's no win.
Okay.
Or yeah.
I like that.
I'll take it. I'll take it from the whisperer.
Yeah, I like that.
I'll take it. So, every Friday nights at 8, we are here coming to you live talking about a variety of different things and how our relationships are impacted. And it looks as if we may be wrapping up our conversation for this week. And we will definitely be coming to you next week with another installment around communication and those difficult conversations. And possibly we welcome any male voice to join the panel with us. But we definitely have a lot of things that we can cover. So we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
All right.
All
Have a
right.
good night, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.
Absolutely. Y'all be safe and stay
Enjoy
safe.
you.
Yes.